In 1870, a 31-year-old man from Cleveland, Ohio, started a company that would reshape civilization. Not with new technology, not through war, but with a system so clever, so permanent, that 154 years later, every person on Earth is still trapped inside it. His name was John Davison Rockefeller, and by the time he died, he hadn't just built the world's largest fortune. He had engineered the blueprint for eternal control, a blueprint that every power structure since has copied. This is stage 1 of 5, the foundation stage. I'm going to show you exactly how one man created a system you can never escape. Most people know Rockefeller as the oil baron, the guy who got rich selling kerosene. But that's not the real story. The real story is how he took 3 separate systems: energy, finance, and education, and welded them together into an inescapable trap. And here's what should terrify you. The system is stronger today than when he built it, because every attempt to break it has only made it more powerful. Before Rockefeller, these 3 systems were separate. You could escape one by moving to another. If the banks controlled you, you could become self-sufficient in energy. If the government controlled your mind, you could educate your children independently. But Rockefeller understood something no one else did: control all 3, and you control everything forever. Let me show you how he built the foundation. Starting in 1870, because stage 1 of any permanent system is always the same: make yourself indispensable. First, the energy trap. When Rockefeller started, there were thousands of small, independent oil refineries. Every city had its own. Cleveland alone had 22 competitors when he began. But Rockefeller saw something they didn't. Oil wasn't just a product, it was the lifeblood of industrial civilization. Control the oil and you control everything that runs on it, and soon everything would run on it. Here's the genius move. Instead of competing on price, he competed on integration. While his competitors bought oil, refined it, and sold it, Rockefeller bought the oil wells, built the refineries, manufactured his own barrels, owned the railroads, and controlled the entire distribution network. He owned every single step of the process. By 1872, his company, Standard Oil, didn't just sell kerosene, it was kerosene. From the well to the lamp, Rockefeller controlled every molecule. This is called vertical integration, and once it's established, it's unbreakable. Because your competitors aren't just competing with your product, they're competing with your entire system. A small refinery in Cleveland might make cheaper kerosene, but they could never match Rockefeller's railroad rates, his barrel costs, his distribution network, or his access to crude oil. The whole system worked together to crush any independent operator. By 1880, Standard Oil refined 90% of America's oil, not 51%, not 70%, 90%. This wasn't just market dominance. This was the systematic elimination of all alternatives. And here's the key insight. Rockefeller didn't achieve this through better products. He achieved it through a better system. The Cleveland Massacre of 1872 proves this. In just 6 weeks, Standard Oil bought out 22 of its 24 Cleveland competitors. Not by force, but by pure mathematics. Rockefeller would walk into a competitor's office with 2 offers: sell to me at my price, or I'll bankrupt you, and buy your assets at auction for half that price. When you control the system, you control the outcomes. But energy was just stage 1, the foundation, because once you control what powers civilization, you can build stage 2, financial control. Standard Oil generated an absurd amount of cash. By 1900, Rockefeller was personally worth $900 million. In today's money, that's over $630 billion. More than Elon Musk, more than anyone alive today. But here's what most people miss. Rockefeller didn't just accumulate wealth, he created wealth systems. In 1882, Standard Oil became the Standard Oil Trust. This was the first modern corporation. But it wasn't just a company, it was a trust. What's the difference? A company is owned by shareholders. A trust is controlled by trustees forever. The Standard Oil Trust Agreement pooled 40 companies into a single entity controlled by just 9 trustees, with Rockefeller as the chief. This structure was revolutionary. Before trusts, if you owned a company and died, your heirs inherited it. They might sell it, split it up, or run it into the ground. But a trust never dies. The original trustees pass away, but the trust itself continues, with new trustees ensuring the same control. The Rockefeller Family Trust of 1934 still exists today. Administered by Chase Bank, a bank the Rockefellers helped create. Here's the mechanism. Rockefeller didn't just build Standard Oil and keep the profits. He used those profits to buy banks, railroads, mines, and steel companies. So by 1911, when the government finally broke up Standard Oil into 34 separate companies, Rockefeller owned pieces of all of them, plus the banks that financed them, the railroads that shipped their products, and the steel companies that built their infrastructure. This was the creation of a system you can't escape. But this was only stage 1 and 2. The next stages are even more insidious. You think the breakup of Standard Oil ended Rockefeller's monopoly. Think again, it actually multiplied his wealth. Exxon, Mobil, Chevron, Conoco, BP, all of them are just pieces of the original Standard Oil, and they're all still connected through financial networks. that trace right back to the original trust structure. See, when you own the entire system, you can't lose, you just reorganize. But controlling energy and finance wasn't enough. People might resist, they might demand alternatives, they might educate themselves out of dependency. So, Rockefeller built Stage 3, the education system. In 1902, John D. Rockefeller founded the General Education Board. By 1930, he had donated over $180 million, that's $7 billion in today's money. Officially, it was philanthropy, all about improving American education. But here's the real mission, straight from their own documents. In our dream, we have limitless resources, and the people yield themselves with perfect docility to our molding hands. We shall not try to make these people or any of their children into philosophers or men of learning or men of science. Read that again. Perfect docility, our molding hands. They weren't trying to create thinkers. This wasn't education. It was systematic dumbing down, and it worked. Before 1900, American education was decentralized. Local communities and parents controlled what their kids learned, things like trades, classics, and critical thinking. After Rockefeller's board stepped in, everything became standardized. The same textbooks, the same teaching methods, all designed to produce one thing: compliant workers for industrial jobs. He partnered with Andrew Carnegie, who funded teacher training programs. If you wanted to be a teacher, you had to go through these programs, which taught you to follow the Rockefeller-approved curriculum and emphasize standardized tests over independent thought. By 1914, the National Education Association was sounding the alarm about these foundations trying to control educational policies. But it was too late. The system was already built. And here's the truly brilliant part. Once you control how people think, they'll defend the very system that enslaves them. They'll call it education, demand more of it, pay taxes to fund it, and voluntarily send their children into it. The perfect trap. By 1920, Rockefeller had the foundations in place: energy, finance, and education. But it wasn't complete. Stage 4 was institutionalization, embedding the system so deeply into society that it becomes impossible to remove. The Federal Reserve System, created in 1913, was the masterpiece. J.P. Morgan and the Rockefellers designed it in secret. The Federal Reserve isn't federal, and it has no reserves. It's a private banking cartel with government backing, and it permanently locked in Rockefeller's financial control. Here's how. The Fed creates money by buying government bonds. Who sells those bonds? The big banks like J.P. Morgan Chase, a Rockefeller bank. When the government borrows money, it pays interest to these bondholders, so government debt becomes private wealth for the very institutions Rockefeller helped create. Stage 5 was globalization. They took the American model and spread it worldwide. The Rockefeller Foundation funded the United Nations building, the Council on Foreign Relations, and the Trilateral Commission. John D.'s grandson, David Rockefeller, spent 40 years as CEO of Chase Manhattan Bank, building the global financial network that now processes almost all international transactions. Today, every major oil company, bank, central bank, and international organization uses the same basic structure Rockefeller pioneered: vertical integration, trust control, standardized education, and debt-based money creation. So why can't you escape? Because it's not just one trap. It's 5 interlocking traps. And once you're caught in one, the others activate automatically. Ever felt like you're running in a hamster wheel, working hard but getting nowhere? What if I told you it's not an accident? It's a system designed over 150 years ago, and we're all trapped inside. Let's start with the energy trap. Everything you use, from your car to your phone, runs on oil or electricity. And who controls it? Descendants of the original Standard Oil thinking of going green. Solar panels need rare earth metals controlled by massive corporations. Wind turbines need steel from industrial giants. Batteries need lithium from mining cartels. There's no real escape. Then there's the financial trap. Everything costs money, and almost all money is just debt, created by a banking system with roots tracing back to Rockefeller. Want to avoid banks? Good luck. You can't buy property, start a business, or even hold a lot of cash without them knowing. Even Bitcoin is traded on exchanges run by the very financial institutions people were trying to escape. Next, the education trap. To get anywhere, you need credentials. And where do those come from? Accredited institutions. The accreditation bodies themselves were shaped by foundations started by Carnegie and Rockefeller. Whether you want to be a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer, you have to go through their system, learn their curriculum, and accept their view of the world. This leads to the legal trap. All our laws require compliance. These laws are written by officials who are educated in those same institutions, financed by those same banks, and advised by think tanks founded by the same interests. The legal system is the enforcer, making sure all the other traps hold firm. And finally, the information trap. Nearly everything you know or believe comes from media corporations funded by these exact same financial networks. Schools teach us to trust the experts, But those experts are often funded by foundations controlled by the same small group of interests. It's a genius design because each trap reinforces the others. It's a closed loop. The energy system needs money. The money needs educated managers. The education needs legal approval. The legal system needs information control. And broadcasting that information requires energy. Today, 154 years after Standard Oil was founded, the system is more powerful than ever. ExxonMobil, Chevron, BP, all descendants still rule global energy. JP Morgan Chase, a merger of Rockefeller's and Morgan's banks, is the largest in America, and the system is evolving. We're seeing the push for central bank digital currencies, which would make every single transaction traceable, smart grids that can control your energy use remotely, digital IDs that link your finances, energy use, and education to a social score. This isn't some dystopian movie plot. It's the logical next step for a system built on one principle: control the basics of life, and you control life itself. This system is so unbreakable because it's invisible to most people inside it. They think they're making free choices, going to school, getting a job, using money. They can't see the cage because they were born in it. It also works, just enough. By providing benefits, you get an education, even if it's designed for compliance. You get energy, even if it creates dependency. These benefits are just real enough to keep people from questioning the source. And if you do try to leave, the system punishes you. Try to go off-grid, and you'll face legal battles and social isolation. Try to live without banks, and you're cut off from the modern economy. Over the next decade, this system will continue to adapt. We'll see the energy transition from oil to electric, controlled by the same players. We'll see the financial system digitize from cash to CBDCs, run by the same banks. Education will move from schools to screens, but with the same curriculum. It will all be sold to us as progress. Green energy, digital convenience, personalized learning. But it's just the same 154-year-old machine getting a software update. John D. Rockefeller created more than a company. He created a template for permanent control. He understood that real power isn't about controlling people directly, but controlling the systems they depend on. That's why every revolution fails to change the fundamentals. The rebels end up using the same energy, money, and media as the powers they're trying to overthrow. They might change who's in charge, but they can't change the machine itself. Every single person on this planet now lives inside the system he built. Understanding how you're trapped is the first step. The next step, well, that's a story for another video. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. Thanks for watching.